Hello everybody, Andrew Casey at Hypersanity Books.
Who the fuck is this?
Today we're going to talk about codependency and interdependence, why it's important. We're touching base with the Flash movie 2023. Otherwise, let's get into it. Number 10. Talking about the past.
Do you want to live your past? Live your life. Don't let your tragedy define you.
What if it's supposed to define me?
In the film, he talks to Bruce Wayne, which is Batman, about going back in time. He found it was possible to maybe go back and change one thing to have a completely different life. So I think about this with my personal life. Scenario A is the current life that I have. I know what I would have done to go back in time to prevent one thing to have scenario B be completely different. However, there was another circumstance in my life that in scenario A and B would have been completely different stories, but the same unforeseeable event still was going to happen. If not, it would have been worse. So if I did that change. So I would have now said, oh, well, how about I go back to scenario that same point, that same day, and talk about this problem and that problem and all these other things. Then in scenario C, I would still have the same underlying problem or something else worse. So that's one thing within the premise of the story. Bruce Wayne has accepted the passing of his parents. So going back in time to try to change that event can lead to more catastrophic events. Number 9. One change.
Don't forget the tomato.
He goes back in time with the tin of tomatoes that's needed to have in the house, so the father didn't have to leave the house because in that time the mother was killed. So that one occasion he's now changed one point in history to have a different outcome. So trying to go back to the present as time's going forward, it's showing in this other science fiction area. And like science fiction, it challenges big ideas, and that's something to think about with certain storytelling. I know people love and hate different films that are superheroes. It challenges big ideas. Seeing that years are going past from being 10 to eventually being 18. And then there is someone else that intervenes, which knocks him into a different timeline. Number 8. Seeing what could have been.
You and I are not supposed to be occupying the same reality at all, let alone interacting.
I just can't believe I'm a superhero who time travels.
No.
As he's knocked into this other parallel time, he is having lunch with his mother, having that meaningful moment with his father, seeing a different family dynamic that he never got to have. And it's having that personal experience. And we all think about this. What could have been? And within this time, he's having that time with his mum. Little did he then realise the other version of himself in that timeline is codependent, coming home with his dirty laundry for his mummy to wash. Now, that codependency is something that the main character has not seen. And I like the premise of the story. So the Flash is seen as the protagonist, and then the other character is the deuteragonist for a time. So within the story, the way they both confront each other, it leads to other conflicts because one person is independent and had an independent life due to circumstances that were tragic, losing his mum, and the other one is codependent because he had his mum to be there through the years. Number 7. What we take for granted. The frustration for the main character is seeing the other version of himself to what is taken for granted by having a mother. Though there are different interactions that are quite funny in the story where he's trying to help him to be lined up to get the superpowers, and through the incident that is trying to be recreated, he gets hit and loses his powers while the codependent version has the powers. Some of the premise of the story was quite interesting. I did like the humour and how the story unfolded in front of myself. Seeing the two versions. In creating the conflict, it's conflict within himself, just in a different, unique way. Number 6. Parallel world.
Present and no future. No future, no past. The multiverse. Some strands run almost parallel. There will be inevitable intersections.
One thing that gets made clear, he's in a parallel world, so Bruce Wayne is a different age. This was interesting to see Michael Keaton reprise his role from the other films, Batman and Batman Returns, to what could have been, with the future unfolded. Number 5. Alignment unknown. One thing I enjoyed with the film, with the story unfolding and the different conflicts, you have the Flash, then you have the Flash from that timeline with Batman, and then trying to rescue Superman, they find out that it's someone else. With the story, you don't know the alignment that she has, or her intentions or motivations. With Bruce Wayne, it's the same thing. It keeps some mystery involved. The main character has his frustrations with his codependent version of himself. With that character as well being codependent, you also see some of the frustrations, and you wonder if his alignment is going to change in the story to be evil. There are certain conflicts that can be created with characters, keeping mystery to someone's alignment, to what type of intentions they have. Number 4. Interdependence. After getting his powers back through the story, each character, each of the 4 characters are now part of an interdependent group. That's also a reference that he talked about where Batman asked what were the other group called, the Justice League. It got him excited being a part of a group, which is something that Batman didn't seem to have done, or that version of Batman. With interdependence, this is also important, and you might consider this with your writing. You might have a group that you collaborate with, and every person is an independent circle. Then you have relationships being together, where it's 2 independent circles of equal stature meeting in the middle. That's the relationship. With the circumstances of the 4 characters, they're independent characters that are working within the incident coming ahead, and the way that the 4 characters come together makes interdependence. Number 3. Infinite Crisis. With the story, and there are spoilers of course, Batman dies. The Flash turns back time to prevent that from happening. Unfortunately, it leads to another inedible death. And then, turn back time, the female version of Superman is going to die, the cousin. With the story, this comes into the main character being the Flash, and seeing the other Flash being the deuteragonist, or if you want, the other protagonist, because of how the story then unfolds. Characters can change into the perspective the story is being told. However, from this point, as the protagonist, you're seeing from his point of view, and the deuteragonist being the other version of the Flash, the codependent, is now interdependent, and he's making independent decisions now to try to turn back time to change the circumstance. And no matter what they're doing, it still comes to the same outcome. Batman's going to die, Supergirl, man, whoever is going to die. There is nothing they can do to change that. Then you got the spaghetti bowl theory with the interacting points of axis where 2 timelines or parallel worlds are intersecting. And within this cluster of a situation, he sees how pointless and helpless it is, that no matter what is happening, he can't change anything. It's going to lead to the same inevitable outcome. Number 2. The Final Goodbye.
I know I'm just a random lady in a store, but you want to hack.
Sure.
In the whole story, he goes back into the past to the point to take out the tin of food, that the tomatoes, so his mum wasn't going to have it. And within that time in the shop, he's wearing sunglasses. He's older, of course, so she's not recognizing him to look like her child or anything else. The meaningful moments come within this scene, and it's hard with the fact that he's letting go. With the whole point of an infinite crisis, especially with time travel stories, you can have a character say, if I could change that one thing, it wouldn't be a waste of time. But they're living in an infinite cycle in the past to something that they may not be able to do, and driven to madness. So within that final sort of goodbye, that acceptance, he sees and acknowledges that his mum's a good person. He has that last meaningful goodbye to her. She hugs him, thinking he's just another person who's depressed and needs a hug. You can see she's a good person. The character is genuine, and that worked well for the story. She didn't have bad intentions or bad blood in her body. She is a good person. And he has that healing phase to be able to move forward because he can accept that his mother is a decent person. There are some circumstances. I lost my father when I was 3. I don't know what could have been. However, I know he was a decent person. As far as what could have been, I can't live in another world that does not exist. I can't live in another timeline that can't be changed. I just think with everything else, need to do the best that we can, despite what challenges we face in life. Which brings me to a final point. Number 1, my son's monologue. After the film, my wife and I were driving with my son home. Now, he has a different mother and different custody arrangement. So while we have him, it's a different family unit. And he went into this huge monologue referencing so many things within the film. And I was so proud, and it led to this proud moment. And he talked about the multiverse. I wish I could have had filmed what he said within life through different things. He could see the codependency of one version, having a mother and having the perfect life, to seeing how there were a lot of problems. He could also see the independent life from the person of the Flash who didn't have a mother. Leading into this monologue, it was brilliant what he said. My son is 9 years old at this time. With the monologuing, he touched on within all multiverses, being in the family unit when he's in Dad's world, it's also his obligation being interdependent with my wife, myself, and him, just like within the film of the interdependence of the 4 characters. And in all multiverses, I'm going to clean my bedroom. And with that being said, it might be something to laugh about, but he is making that independent choice. And from there, it's making the family unit work. As a father, it was one of the proudest moments, especially with all the referencing from a movie, which again, I find funny in one light, in another light. It's heartwarming and meaningful. With certain things that happen throughout life, there are different ways that we work in with people. There are different situations that we find ourselves in. And there are some situations where you see someone, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and you see certain things that give you a different respect for people. And that's something that I see within my profession all the time. That all said, that's it for today. Hit like, subscribe, comment. I'll be doing more videos. However, with the point on today, have a good think about codependency and interdependence with your characterization. And I'll see you all next time.